Welcome back, guys. This is going to be your Chapter 1 overview for Principles of Public Speaking, SH 100, over the summer. Today we're going to go over getting started in the course, go over the definition of communication and what that means, why we do it and why it's important. Also ways for you to get better at it, and things that sort of commonly go wrong when people do public speaking. So we'll go over all of that and more in this Chapter 1 overview. One of the big questions we have to ask ourselves with public speaking, why is this important? It's a generational thing, right? But I know a lot of us don't like talking on the phone anymore. We've got texting, we've got, other apps where we can message each other. We don't see the benefit in having to talk on the phone, right? We'd rather send an email or a text to get our point across. That's definitely a generational problem. Our parents didn't have that issue, right? Texting wasn't really a thing back when they were growing up or they were our age. So do people really talk anymore? We've sort of eliminated the need for really long, drawn-out conversations when we can post on Twitter in 140 characters or less. Think of really important people doing that, like our president right now would rather tweet his feelings and actually have a conversation, which is a different problem entirely. But it's a good example, right, to see how far we've come communication-wise from going to these big drawn-out conversations to really concise texts or tweets or things like that. So do people really speak anymore? Well, the answer to that is yes. Even if you're posting on an online platform like that, or you're sending out a text to someone or anything like that, you're still speaking, right? You're still communicating, okay? It's changed. The dynamic has changed a lot. But again, any material that you're putting out there, me right now can be considered public speaking, right? Because I'm speaking to a general group of people and I'm putting that message out there online, right? So this is technically public speaking. So public speaking has changed for sure because of technology, because of social media and that kind of thing. But we still do it, and for that reason we still need to know how to do it well. Okay, but in a more general term, what is communication? Right? We say communications. I have a communications degree. I have 2 communications degrees, right? But what does that mean to communicate, right? And at its core, communications is just the process of sending and receiving messages, okay? The process of sending out a message to an audience, to a group, to an individual, okay? Them receiving that message, okay? Then them sending you a message, you receiving that message, processing it, and then deciding what to do with it. Okay, so communication, just at its core, is a process of sending and receiving messages. Now, I come from an advertising background, okay, so our goal was sending out messages that say, hey, buy our product, use our service, all right? Ideally, consumers would receive those messages and buy our product or use our service, right? That's not always the case, but again, it's just about sending out a message to an audience, to an individual, and hoping that they receive it and that they will do something with it. Okay, so it's really easy to sort of comprehend when you think about it that way. Now, there's other branches of communication, obviously, but at its core, it's all about messages. All right, how we get them, how we send them out. All right, there's 2 types of communication. Here, we're going to focus on both of them. Okay, we're going to focus more on the verbal communication. Okay, so that's one aspect. Verbal obviously means talking, speaking. Okay. So that is what we're going to focus on most in this class. But as you can see, I'm doing it right now. There's nonverbal communication as well. So hand gestures, body language, how you react to certain situations with your facial expressions, all that kind of thing. It's called nonverbal communication. Okay, and a lot of times that can be just as powerful as the verbal communication. Give you an example. If you're sitting in the cafeteria or somewhere in public, all sold up looking with your back turned to everyone with this mean look on your face, right? No one's really going to want to come up to talk to you, right? At least I wouldn't, I don't think. Versus someone sitting there with a smile on their face, looking like they're very receptive to someone coming up to talk to them, that kind of thing, right? You haven't said a word in either of those situations, but that language, that body language, what we call it, so that nonverbal, that body language, says a lot about your attitude, about who you are at that time, right? And the situation that you're in, okay? So nonverbal communication can be very important as well, okay? Ideally, in a public speaking situation, your nonverbal and your verbal will work together to sort of deliver a stronger, more professional presentation, okay? You guys can see that I'm sitting behind a desk, but I talk with my hands. Talking with your hands is a lot using those hand gestures, using your facial expressions, moving around a little bit. All of that can help your presentation or hurt it, but mostly it can help it, okay? So think about the verbal and the nonverbal when we're doing this, okay? And again, public speaking, sort of the name of this class, right, is just speaking to an audience. That audience can be big or small. In your situations, it's going to be to at least 2 people, so a really small audience. I teach for a living, so I have classrooms of anywhere from 5 students up to 30 or 40 at a time. Okay, so my audience varies based on the need in the classroom. Okay, you're going to learn how to sort of adapt to your audience as we go, depending on their size, depending on their demographic breakdown. All of that, you guys will learn how to do that as we progress throughout the course. Okay, ideally. So we'll learn that later on. So why do we learn public speaking? Why do we make you guys take this course? Out of all the courses that you have to take in college, we make you take this one. And there's several reasons why. We want you guys to be able to express yourself fully, okay? And there's several reasons for that. We do it for the sake of democracy, and I know that sounds sort of big and lofty, kind of a big idealist kind of goal, but it's true. We do it for the sake of democracy because you have a freedom of speech in this country, okay? You as an individual, you as a citizen of the United States have the ability to express your feelings and say essentially what you want as long as it doesn't hurt anyone else, okay? So you need to be able to do that very well and articulate your point very well, okay? For the sake of democracy, you have a right to do that. You have a right to express your opinion and voice your thoughts on different issues. We see that a lot in terms of politics and things we believe on each side of issues and that kind of thing, okay? So you want to be able to form a good argument. You want to be able to form sound points, okay, related to those issues, okay? It's a good life skill, all right? It helps you succeed personally. No one wants to hire someone who can't articulate their thoughts or who talks so timidly that they can't understand them or who won't speak up, right? So it's a good life skill. It helps you succeed personally. It helps you develop critical thinking skills, okay? So if you're going to form an argument or tell someone about something, okay, you want to be able to develop those critical thinking aspects related to that point, okay, to again form that good argument, form that good presentation, get all the information that you can, okay? We're going to teach you how to do that in this course. It helps you resolve conflicts. Again, especially when we get to the argumentative speech, you're able to see both sides of an issue and sort of look at both sides and resolve that conflict, hopefully. Figure out which point is right and which one is wrong, okay, and go with that. And again, it can help you succeed professionally. Again, it's a skill that everyone needs in the workforce. If you're going to be a nurse, right, you have to be able to talk to strangers every day. If you're going to be a teacher, you're talking every day. Again, I talk every day to a different group of people. If you're going to be, in terms of business, you need to be able to articulate your thoughts and sound fluent and sound professional so that people will take you seriously, right? So good public speaking skills are necessary for everyone, whether they think they are or not. Even if you just want to go work in a cubicle all day, every day by yourself, you still need these skills, okay? Because eventually you're going to have to talk to someone, unfortunately, whether you want to or not. All right, so good skills to have, good necessary sort of life skills that we want all you guys to have when you graduate from here and go out in the workforce and be successful, okay? The process of communication, going back to sort of overarching communication ideas, there's a process of communication and it involves 7 different components, okay? Communication, again, sounds really simple, but we're going to break it down a little further into these 7 different components so you guys can understand sort of how this process works, okay? And if you don't get all this, it's fine. Again, I'm posting these notes so you guys can look these over. But I want to talk about some of these points, just sort of help you understand them a little bit better, all right? So the communication process has 7 components. The first one, of course, is the sender. Now, in this case, speaking to you guys, I am the sender, okay? And now all that means is that I'm sending out a message, okay? I'm the originator of that message. It's my job to be responsible and to be ethical okay, and to be socially responsible, okay, with the message that I send out. I wouldn't want to sit here and tell you guys about biology, right? Because that is not my field, that's not my background, okay? It wouldn't be very ethical for me to talk about that because I'm not credible in that area. I am credible in the area of communications, okay? So that's why I'm able to sit here and talk to you guys about this and feel comfortable with that. Biology, physics, anything that is just out of my wheelhouse, it would not be very ethical for me to talk about that. So I'm not, all right? So ethics are important here, but the sender has the responsibility of being ethical and sending out a message. Okay, whatever that message may be, whatever it needs to be, it's the sender's job to make that effective and send that out. Okay. Now, the second part is the message itself. So what am I saying? It's the idea that the sender wants to communicate. Okay. Again, that idea can be whatever the speaker wants it to be or whatever the speaker needs it to be, but it needs to be clear, it needs to be concise, it needs to be understandable by the audience. Okay. Number 3 is the environment. Okay, so this is my environment right now. We're in the studio that we're in. All right. It's the time and place of the communication event. Now, the environment is very different depending on the type of speaking situation that you're in. It determines what is appropriate for your speaking situation. I say to my students, you speak very differently at a funeral than you do at a wedding, right? Very different occasions, okay? The environment is very different, okay? One is very somber, one's hopefully very happy, right? So you speak differently in those different situations, and your environment will dictate how you speak, okay? Number 4 is the channel, okay? So think of TV channels, all right? The channel is how the message is transmitted, okay? And it's related to your senses, so your 5 senses, your sight, your sound, your taste, your touch, and your hearing. We may have covered that already. But all of your sensations, smell, we didn't cover smell. But it's related to your senses. So think of TV channels, okay? Think of, you flip through your channels, they're sending different messages, okay? We have specific TV channels for specific things. So we have things like Food Network, we have HGTV, right? Very specific channels. The Discovery Channel, okay? QVC for shopping, right? They all have very different sort of niches in the TV department, right? And they're all sending different messages. So whatever message you want to send, you need to make sure that the channel is appropriate to get that message out, okay? It can be something as simple as the airwaves, okay? So if I'm in a classroom talking to my students, the channel essentially is the airwaves because they're getting the message directly from my mouth to their ears, right? In this case, the channel is online, okay? So, or the internet. So I'm posting this video online for you guys. You're looking at it. That is the channel of how you're receiving this message, okay? So your channel is just how the message is transmitted to your audience, to the people that you're speaking to, okay? Number 5 is your receivers, okay? So your audience, okay? And it's who the message is meant for. This is key. Okay, one of the biggest things that we can sort of emphasize in public speaking is that your audience is the most important factor in any speaking situation. Okay, you need to know who they are. You need to know why they're there to hear you speak. Okay, you need to know why they're interested in hearing you talk about whatever you're talking about. Okay, you need to know as much about them as you possibly can before you go into that speaking situation because they are number 1. Okay. You need to be able to read your audience, okay? Read your audience, be able to see who they are, they kind of know their background a little bit before you get into the speaking situations, okay? Your audience, your receivers, will then hopefully give you number 6, which is feedback, okay? What we mean by feedback is just the response that your receivers give you, okay? We call this feedback. That can be anything from nodding and acknowledging that they're hearing you, or asking questions, or smiling at you. What are they doing when you speak to them? Are they giving you that sort of affirmation that, yeah, they're listening? Are they nodding off? Are they ignoring you? Are they texting? What are they doing during that speech, okay? Now, if you can read that, okay, and you can see what they're doing, you can adjust your speech. If you see that they're texting and not paying you attention, maybe you need to shift up your speech a little bit, okay? Make it a little more exciting, change topics, focus on something a little different. If they're giving you really good affirmations and nodding and clapping and smiling at you, then you keep going because you're doing a good job. Okay, that feedback will kind of tell you how you're doing. Okay, and how your audience is feeling about your speech. All right, and number 7 is noise. Okay, so we think of noise as actual sort of auditory sounds, right? And that's true, but noise in a general concept means any sort of interference that happens in your speech. They can be internal or external. External noise is kind of what we think about. So actual noise, actual things happening, people getting up and walking around, that's a distraction. If anyone gets a phone call during your speech, that's a distraction, right? If your phone is vibrating in your pocket, that's kind of a distraction, right? So those are external ones. Internal ones, or anything that sort of happens on the inside, right? So you have this negative self-talk, right? And that sort of messes you up. That's a distraction. If you're hungry and your stomach starts growling, right? So you know that you're hungry and you start thinking about it, that's a distraction. And that happens to your audience too. They feel those same emotions and feelings that you do. All right. So noise can really interfere with your speech. Your job as a speaker is to eliminate as much of the noise that you have going on as possible. You can't really control what goes on with your audience, but you can control what happens with you. Okay, so you need to eliminate sort of any distractions that you may have before you go into a speech. Okay, so that's the 7 components of the communication process. And I know that's sort of a long, drawn-out kind of example of just sending and receiving a message. And it's pretty sort of common sense, right? We know all these things happen when we send out a message. We just don't ever really think about it. But I've got some examples here to sort of emphasize those points a little bit more. The first example is going to be a man trying to propose to his girlfriend at a football game. Okay, so we're going to go through that communication process and explain sort of how that works. So a man trying to propose to his girlfriend at a football game. Okay, the sender of the message is obviously the guy, getting down on one knee, hopefully, if he's doing it right. Your message is the question, hey, will you marry me? Okay, the channel is straightforward. It's heard, right? It's straight one-on-one communication, right? She sees him asking the question and she hears him asking the question. So your channel is just auditory and visual, okay? Your environment is the football game itself, okay? So you're at a stadium, a field, whatever, and so that's your environment. The receiver of the message is obviously his potential fiance, and hopefully she'll say yes. Feedback would be her answer. Again, hopefully it's a yes. If not, oops. But noise in that situation, okay? Any distractions, maybe actual noise from the crowd, a band playing, sort of internal feelings of embarrassment or nervousness, right? All of those are actual distractions, okay? So that's a really easy example to sort of understand how that process works. Another one is a football coach trying to signal a play to his players, all right? The coach is obviously the sender, okay? The message itself is the play, okay? The environment is obviously the football game, so again, same kind of situation on the field, that kind of thing. The channel, in this case, is probably going to be through sign language. So we know we've seen coaches sign plays to their players and stuff because you can't hear in this situation, so you depend a lot on the nonverbal communication at that point. The receivers are the players, and probably some actual receivers, right? Feedback is whether or not they make the play or if they see the play. So if they run the wrong play, they obviously didn't get the message, right? Or body language sort of affirming that they understood the message, all right? Noise, again, could be other players in the way of the message. You can't see it. Actual noise, again, from the crowd or from other players, or any other interference that sort of makes them not see that play, okay? So the first example is very sort of verbal based. The second example is very nonverbal based. But again, we see how that communication process works for both of those, okay? Along with those 7 components of the communication process, in a more general sense, there are 5 principles of communication. And so this is principles of public speaking. So these principles are going to be very important, okay? The number 1 is a little confusing because it says you cannot not communicate, okay? You can't not communicate, all right? And what we mean by that is even in your sleep, you're sending a message, okay? You're always sending out messages related to your body language, related to your facial expressions. We're communicating all the time, whether we know it or not, okay? So you're always communicating even when you sleep, right? Because your body language kind of determines how you sleep and that kind of thing. But you're always communicating even if you don't think you are, okay? Sometimes not responding if someone sent you a message or a text or something also sends a message itself, right? So you're still communicating somehow when there's been any kind of message given to you or sent to you, okay? Communication, number 2, communication is irreversible, okay? Once the message is out there, it's out there. And we see this a lot online, so we go on, Facebook or Twitter or something and say something we shouldn't have said and delete it. 9 times out of 10, someone's already seen it before you can delete it. And we always say that once something is online, you can't get rid of it, right? And that's probably true. That's very true, actually. So you always need to be wary of your communication. We always have, I use an example that we probably always have that one friend that we've gotten in an argument with before, and we know that we can say that one thing that would just ruin their life, that would end this argument, that would just make them, shut up forever, right? And then you say it, and then you instantly regret it because you know you shouldn't have said it, all right? That's out there, all right? They've heard it. You've hurt them in some way, and you've said it, and you can't take it back, all right? So that's what we mean by communication is irreversible. Once you've said it, it's out there, okay? Whether that's online or in person, anything like that, right? It's hard to take it back, so be wary of that. Communication is a process, which is number 3, and it changes with time. Okay, so we think of slang, right? There's new slang terms developed all the time, okay? We didn't have some of those back in the day, right? We've kind of evolved from cave drawings, right, way back in the day, right, to these massive vocabularies and languages around the world. So language develops over time, and it's continuously developing, especially with technology and other things happening, right? We develop new terms and new inventions and creations and that kind of thing that need words, okay? So communication is always evolving. It's a process. All right. Number 4 is that communication is learned, okay? What that means is it's not inherent, all right? The only sort of universal things in the world are laughing and crying, okay? Smiling and crying. Those are sort of universal body language points, right, that everyone understands, okay? Everything else is learned, okay? So this is why people can learn more than one language. This is why you teach your kids a new language while they're young, because they're learning it in addition to their main language or their first language, okay? But that's why we can learn new languages, right? Because it's all learned material. It's not inherent, okay? And number 5 is that communication is not cross-cultural, okay? What we mean by that is that certain things mean different things in different cultures, okay? Different cultures present themselves differently, okay? Americans are generally perceived around the world as being sort of loud and boisterous and obnoxious, and we probably are, so that's probably true. To other people, that's how they see us, okay? We embrace that sort of aspect of our culture, being outspoken and being opinionated about everything. Some other cultures see that as detrimental. Example of this is I've had several students from around the world, some international students in my speaking classes before, especially some Chinese students. Their culture is very different. They're much quieter, much more reserved, and it took me a lot of time to get them out of their comfort zone, out of that comfort zone, and to speak on a level that we do here that wasn't as reserved. So again, cultures are different. Different things mean different things to people around the world, okay? So it's not all the same, okay? So you need to be sensitive to that when you give presentations. You need to know who is in your audience, you need to know if something's going to be offensive to them or not. All right, so that way you can sort of adjust that based on your audience. Okay, and those are the 5 principles of communication. Okay, now again, there's a lot of lists we have going on here, but again, I'll post these so you guys can see these really easily. One of the biggest detriments to public speaking is that people have a massive, massive fear of public speaking. And I used to as well, especially in high school and things like that. I didn't like public speaking. I didn't want to do it. I had to a lot and hated it every single time. But public speaking in the United States is the #1 fear that people have, and that's above dying. That's above snakes, which I am deathly afraid of. It's above the fear of going to war. So it's the #1 fear that people have in this country, which is astounding to me. People never really want to volunteer to speak in front of a group, and a lot of people do anything they can to avoid it. I've had that situation in my classes. Everyone who's really afraid of it always wants to go last. They always want to see other people do it first before they go. It's just because they're so afraid of it. And that's what we're trying to get you guys away from. It's okay to have it. We understand that it's there. We also have to know how to work past it and move past it and get better. Okay? But there's 3 main categories that describe how your body stresses over stage fright. Fear of public speaking, stage fright, same kind of thing. There's physical sensations, okay? And this can be anything that, from sleeplessness to an upset stomach or dizziness, sweating, right? We all do that when we get nervous, have that nervous kind of sweat happening. Tingling in your hands and legs, shaking, right, from nervousness. All those are physical sensations, okay? And those are pretty common and easy to understand. You also have emotional responses, anything related to how you feel, okay? So if you feel overwhelmed or if you're scared, if you have a loss of control, you forget lines if you have something memorized, you feel depressed or panicky or anxious, helplessness, inadequacy, abandonment, frustrated, any of those things that you can feel right before you give a speech or during a speech or anything like that. Those are emotional responses, okay? There's also psychological responses, okay? So those, we've gone over what you feel physically. We've gone over how you feel emotionally, and now this is how you think. This can be a sudden loss of memory, negative self-talk. If you stumble during the middle of it and you think to yourself, oh, why did I do that? Why did I do that? I shouldn't have done that. You know, that kind of thing. Jumbled up thoughts, nervous word repetitions, if you start stuttering or something like that, and that kind of thing. That is a psychological response. So that's all things that you think, okay? No one else can see those. Those are all going on inside your head, but they can be really detrimental to your overall speech if you get in your head like that and start thinking negatively about the speech itself. So we're going to try to get you guys over that. The negative thing is that those 3 factors, the physical, the emotional, and the psychological, can all interact with each other and sort of compound on themselves, and it can really mess you up when you're speaking, but you have to learn to get past those, and we'll work on that throughout this course. So you have to understand that these feelings are natural. They happen to everyone. Okay, you're not alone in this. I still get nervous sometimes when I'm speaking in front of people, especially if they're important people. But again, you just have to learn to work past it. You need coping mechanisms to move forward away from that. One of the biggest things you can do is to admit that you experience nervousness, right? We all do it. You're in control in those situations. Your audience is there to listen. You're in control of the way you speak. You're in control of what you say and how you say it, okay? So put that message out there strongly, and your audience will react accordingly, all right? One of the biggest things you can do is to rehearse. Be confident in it. If you've rehearsed it several times and you know that you've got it, you've got it. So go out there with that confidence. Get experience talking in front of people. Again, that's kind of what we're doing in this course, getting you more familiar and comfortable speaking in front of people. If nothing else, fake it till you make it. Pretend to be confident. Again, no one else knows what's going on inside your head or your body other than you, right? So just put on a good front to the audience and no one will know the difference, all right? And again, another big thing that you can do is be really organized, and that's what we're going to focus on your manuscript and your outline, is make sure that you guys are organized when you go speak. Again, fear of public speaking and stage fright is a real thing. One of the biggest goals that we can do throughout the semester is sort of help you guys get over a little bit of that. It won't go away completely ever, but we can help you get better at it as we go, and hopefully we'll achieve that with these speeches that you do in this course. All right, that's chapter 1. Okay, we'll post chapter 2 sometime soon, so you guys can look over that. Until then, if you have any questions about chapter 1, look over your notes, let me know. If not, we will go on with chapter 2. This will be included on your first quiz, so keep these notes that I post for you and keep this video for reference. And make sure you read your textbook whenever you get it, reading chapter 1, focusing on the key points and highlighted terms. Thanks.